Um, Maybe a little introduction about myself. I'm a Braille teacher. I had to say it loud, so I do it. And I also coach teachers who guide Braille students. And the theme where I want to talk about is how to increase the speed of Braille reading. And it's about the Braille reading technique. I hope everyone has his paper now. I need a little introduction to come to my point. In my school, I come from Rotterdam. We did a practical research in how to use the fingers and the movements to become a well-developed reading technique. Well, good reading skills are core skills for work and life. I think we all share this opinion. But now, how do young Braille readers achieve those good reading skills? And I really agree with the previous speakers. They need a lot of exercise. And well, what works well for tactile readers? I will divide it in 3 parts. The part of the people around the child. We want teachers with knowledge of Braille, parent involvement. We teach parents to learn Braille themselves by reading it by their eyes. The next part is the materials. We need really exercises at the right level, powerful libraries with challenging books. We need a lot of variety of different materials. And the last part, I made the part as big as the other ones, but maybe it's only a small part. It's the awareness of the most optimal technique for fluent reading. And in this session, I will focus on that part. And in the middle, there's the word reading pleasure, because read fun is the key for all reading. And of course, things like linguistic development, phonetic awareness are also very important. But I have to focus in my 20 minutes. Well, let's have high expectations for the best reading technique. And that's because we want to increase the speed of Braille reading. And also we want to avoid ergonomic complaints. So it's important how they use their muscles and their fingers. And well, let us have high expectations about the speed of tactile reading. Well, I have a wonderful job, and once a year I am allowed to go to an African country to coach teachers there. And I made a very small film. It's an African boy, he's 16 years old. And well, let's observe his finger movement.
Wisdom. The milk.
Well, I will explain it. He's reading only with one finger, his left forefinger. And you could hear it and you could observe it. Do we think he's a fast reader? No, he isn't. And yes, what are the guidelines for us for teaching? Well, I think he needs the well-equipped teachers, the variety of materials, and he needs the awareness of the optimal reading technique, because reading with your one forefinger is not so effective. Well, what scientists discover, as a teacher, we try to use it in practice. And well, Susanna Miller, we heard her before. She says a remarkable statement. She says, touch in conjunction with movements of the 2 hands can achieve almost the same facility and speed as visual reading. Well, that's interesting. It's hopeful. And she names the most optimal read technique. And the technique is what is optimal technique? The use of more fingers on a line. The forefingers, they will be the reading fingers, but we can use the other fingers as a as a guidance to follow the line. And Braille students, they really need instruction in the way how they use their fingers, because they cannot copy a well-developed strategy. So as a teacher, we have to tell them what they can do with their fingers. So it's intended that teachers explain how to use the fingers in the optimal way. Well, let's watch a good practice. It's a Dutch boy. His name is Jan. He's 10 years old. And he enjoys reading very much. And he has the same speed as his sighted peers who are reading black print. So let's see how he manages it.
Hoezo, Michael? Ga je klikken dan?
Nee, jij mag het wel doen. Want jij blijft hier met Adam. En als je de eerste doet.
Ik weet het niet, ik ga leven. Ja, en ik ga run 3 spelen.
Nee, jij blijft met Adam binnen, dus jij mag het spelen. En ook omdat je later de beurt bent. Dus als Jenna heeft geen tossen van Sam, mag het niet spelen.
Wel, maar maakt niet uit, joh.
Volgens mij moet het stil zijn. Want
on the line. Now you can understand me better. The noise was rather loud. He uses 6 or 7 fingers on the line. You saw it? And he uses both hands alternately. So his left hand reads half the line and his right hand takes over. And in a fluent movement, the left hand locates the beginning of the second line and he reads on and on. So there's no pause in between the lines. So Jan, he can really apply the appropriate reading technique. And this hand and finger movements, he developed it by experience, because I was his teacher when he was only 6 years old and he couldn't do it like this. So what I did, I made an observation list. I called it Good Skills in Reading Braille. And it's also on your handout. It's the handout, I have to explain, it's in black print and Braille, but it's not corresponding to each other. It has an exercise in Braille and it has the observation list in black print. But for the tactile readers, you can find it on the site of tactile reading. The list consists about 20 subjects which are helping in using the optimal technique. It has 3 main topics. The topics before reading, like the table. Does it have the right height? Because when the table is too high, the child will go like sitting like this and he cannot be relaxed. Warming up is also helpful, different items. The sitting position while reading. There's a picture of a boy. You can see his shoulders are very relaxed. His elbows are next to his body. They're also very relaxed. And there are items about the reading technique. And it's, for example, using a light touch, the use of 6 fingers or more fingers on the line, the take-over technique to switch hands. And what is not on your list is are the guidelines for teaching. It's a separate appendix, and you can find it on the site of Tactile Reading. It's especially for teachers to help them how to guide the process. And the checklist is primarily intended for reading Braille on paper, but it turned out also useful as a directive for teachers as well as for pupils themselves. And it's usable in special and mainstream schools. And for blind teachers, they also can observe the child. You can read the items and ask guided questions to the child. So then the blind teacher also knows which subjects the child is using. Now we see a film of a boy of 7 years old, and he will read only with his 4 fingers. His 4 fingers are parallel to each other, and he's very concentrated in reading rhyme words. We call it rhyme words. It's also a nice exercise.
Pur, sur, pur, tur.
Yes, what we see is young children cannot immediately apply the correct reading technique by using all fingers or the take-over technique because they should learn it step by step. And a first guideline for this boy could be just the awareness of the use of more fingers on the line. But for that awareness, we have to find exercises more easy than the level he is reading. So we choose for simple exercises. And what we do is exercises between Braille road, we call it, Braille tracks. It's a way to automatize Braille characters or words, often common words. And for example, when we teach the word bag, the letters we are going to practice are B and G. And such exercises are also possible for the child who needs the awareness about the reading technique. And maybe it's fun for you to practice it yourself. That's why I made a Braille exercise on it. Maybe you can try just to follow the line as the young boy did with both hands simultaneously from the left to the right, but try to use as many fingers as possible on the line. So maybe you can put it on your lap so you have relaxed shoulders. And try to follow the line with 6 fingers. And if you can, close your eyes. Then you have the real awareness about following the line with 6 fingers. Are your elbows relaxed? Position down to your body. Don't use too much pressure, because otherwise you are heavy-handed. Are your forefingers parallel to each other? Don't put your elbows out, because you will get complaints in pain. You still manage to use as many fingers as possible on the line? Okay, you can stop, because the first 8 lines were this exercise. The second lines is a different exercise. It's meant, I call it the take-over technique, to switch hands. As the motor skills are not sufficient yet, let the child read with both hands together. At the age of 9 years old, we can give explicit instruction for a period in the take-over technique using exercises like this, because realize that different movements of the hands, you saw it by Jan, the 10-year-old boy, it can only be learned at a minimum age of 8 years old. And that's very important, because the skill to switch hands is related to the development of lateralization and dominance. So before it's frustrating to teach a child of 6 years old the take-over technique. Sometimes I make these exercises. You can make it by Perkins or on the computer. And I make a hole in the middle. It's like a ball. And it's just to be aware about when I have to change hands. So it's a very simple exercise. Maybe you want to try it. Halfway your page, there's an exercise to switch hands. So now the intention is you can start with both hands together, but when you feel the ball, you have your right hand continues and your left hand locates the next line. So we use now the take-over technique. Yes, well, try. You can try it. Can you now still use as many fingers as before? Do you feel a difference in your left and your right hand? It's a more difficult exercise, because now B and G are close to each other. So it's rather more difficult than just feeling the letters on a line. Yes, you may stop and continue later. This is really an exercise for the awareness of the takeover technique. And we give explicit instruction for it in a period. Maybe a period of a few weeks sometimes is enough for the child. But later, it's not really necessary for the 2 hands to read equal portions of the text, because each Braille reader has his favorite hand and his difficult hand. Let's call it like that. So the favorite hand will read more, but the take-over technique is always usable, even if it's only for one word. Teacher skills turned out to be awareness of the optimal reading technique. It's important for teacher and for the pupil, the student himself. And it's important they both have high positive shared expectations of Braille and of learning. The reading technique may be also interesting is when I have late blinds, teenagers who became blind or very low vision, I immediately teach them the take-over technique because their motor skills are sufficient enough, and they do not have a real tactile best finger or fingers, so they learn the take-over technique immediately. I forgot to tell you. And next thing for teacher skills is observing and analyzing data. That's very important. To observe, you can use the list. It's easy for a teacher to have it like a checklist. And you can make achievable goals for improvement. Especially when we see regressive movements, it's interesting for the teacher because maybe those are characters or words which are difficult for the child. So we have to make exercises for it. So establish goals per pupil depending on the age and possibilities. Make a plan, make the lessons successfully, like our previous speakers told us. And the interaction between teacher and child is very important. Frequently feedback, teach in a systematic way, express agreement. Well done. It's so important. And what we see is also helpful is when the child names at the end of the lesson what was going well for him, what he is going to use the next days. This is a statement of John Hattie. He's a very well-known researcher in education. His statement is, as a teacher, we need to refocus our efforts to ensure that any actions we take have maximum impact on learning and achievement. So what teachers do matters. And in Visio, we have been using the observation list now for 5 years in special and mainstream schools. We note the targets per pupil and we make goals per period. And the teachers are happy because they have a checklist and now they know what to observe. And the Braille pupils are enthusiastic because they really know what their work points are. And of course, at the end, the pupil will have his or her personal habits. That's fine, but it's important we have offered them the opportunities to use the optimal technique. And yes, we see progress in speed with all our Braille readers. Well, when the child notes progress, it will enjoy reading by touch. And yes, that's my slogan. Let's guide the child step by step to the most optimal technique for fluent reading. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gyntha. And there's time for 1 or 2 short questions. I think in the back we have a question at first. The microphone is approaching.
Yes, Daniel Gartman from Denmark again here. Have you had any experience teaching these techniques to students who use a refreshable Braille display, a laptop?
Did you hear the question?
No, not.
If you have used the technique with the students who have a refreshable Braille display on their laptops, did I get it right?
Yes, or if you have any experience teaching
Yes,
or
yes.
improving the reading speed.
Yeah, we always start with reading on paper,
Yes.
because it's the best way to use the technique. But when they are at the age of Jan, they also read on a Braille, on a computer. Yeah. And you can almost apply the technique on the computer, but you need your thumb for the next line. But it's usable. Yes.
You have experience in that it's usable, the same technique on the Braille display. Is that your experience as well? That it's usable on a Braille display?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It's usable, yes. I had a blind colleague. She was a teacher as well, a Braille teacher. And I worked a lot together with her. And she could give me feedback if she could use it, if we could use it on the computer, yeah.
We have time for one more question on the left. The microphone is coming.
Hello, my name is Engin from Turkey. Actually, mostly I use my left
forefinger
finger,
only your
that
index
finger
yeah.
to read. So you said we have used 6 fingers together.
Yes.
That means free from left and free from right, like
yes.
that.
Yes.
Then how can we increase the feeling of the dots in our other fingers that we have done? We have less used before. First question, and secondly, how many words per minute is ideal according to you for Braille reading? And thirdly, I hope there will be multi-line Braille displays in the future. Then it would be better for your technique in the refreshable Braille also. Thank you.
Easy questions for you.
Well, the first question is how to get a sensitive touch in the other fingers. Well, what we heard from Susanna Miller, the forefingers are the real reading fingers, but beneath the other fingers just as a guidance. So I call them a scout. So they discover how long the line is or how long the word can be. So it's not meant, the forefingers will be favorite, they will stay favorite, but you can use them just to guide the line. Yes, the 3 fingers of your left and your right hand. And it's so funny your question, or no, it's a very it's a good question, because I became the same questions in Africa, because in Africa blind teachers teach Braille to blind children, and the teachers themselves only use 1 finger, and they were so surprised and said, "Oh, the use of more fingers! How can we manage that?" And I was there just for 5 days, and I explained the technique to them, and they were so enthusiastic. Before the lessons, they came and practiced it, and we saw progress in only 3 days. At the end of day 3, they said, "Yes, I feel it. Yes, I see the progress." So, yeah, that's maybe an answer for you. And now I forgot the other questions.
For a Braille reader.
Okay. Well, we have reading tests in Holland, but we do not really do it for a minute. We have a test for sighted children and the same test for Braille children. And the Braille readers or the tactile readers are allowed for 100% double time. So this is not well said, but they have double time to reach the test. So I do not really know the answer about how many words in 1 minute. I have to look it up for you.
Thank you. There's time for a last question if it's very short.
Ik zie daar ook nog, ja. Ja.
Yeah, there's another mic for you.
Hello, I'm Sarah from Resource Center Vision in Sweden. Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah.
And I'm a Braille reader. Where can I find the observation list that you talked about?
It's in my handout on the side. So for this session, you can open the handout on the computer.
Because I just got
Yeah, I know you just became an exercise in Braille because I had to bring a lot of paper from Holland. So,
But I can find your handout somewhere.
it's.
Oh,
Yes, it was on the site. I saw it this morning. It's
Yeah,
on the
the
site.
handouts are-
Yes.
Website. Oh, okay.
yeah, we can
my
look at
sessions.
that
Oh, thank
Yes.
you.
later because Gyntha's handouts are
Yeah.
available
Yes, and for
by
the
the
Braille-
presenter
Yeah.
page, I think.
Yeah, in the handout. And for the Braille readers, I made one without the tables, but just the text. So it's a Word version. And for the sighted teachers, there's the table
Yeah.
one, the checklist. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank
Well
you.
done.